Braveheart is the kind of movie that makes you want to cry, pick up a sword, and immediately start fighting with the nearest empire. And yes, I'm talking about the one with the face paint, the kilts, the mud, and Mel Gibson screaming freedom like he's trying to uppercut the sky. Released in 1995, directed by and starring Mel Gibson, Braveheart isn't just a film. It's a 3-hour emotional ambush. It's messy, it's tragic, it's brutally loud, and somehow it still lands every punch. Is it historically accurate? Absolutely not. But if you came here for a history lesson, you took a wrong turn at the library. We're here for speeches that give you goosebumps, betrayals that make you want to throw your TV, and battles so chaotic you can practically smell the mud. Our journey begins in late 13th century Scotland, where England has pulled up uninvited and decided everyone's freedom is now a subscription service. Scotland is getting bullied by King Edward I, aka Longshanks, aka the worst houseguest in human history. This man doesn't just conquer, he redecorates your entire country with misery and calls it order. The Scottish people are living under harsh rule. Hope is basically extinct, and that's where we meet our main character, William Wallace, played by Mel Gibson, looking like a guy who'd rather be farming than starring in a national tragedy. As a kid, Wallace watches his father and brother murdered as they try to resist the English. It's quiet, cold, and mean. No heroic music. No cinematic, you'll be okay. Just loss. And the lesson's simple. The world is unfair, and Scotland is getting folded like a lawn chair. Wallace gets taken in by his uncle Book Learning, who teaches him to read, ride, and basically installs the Become a Legend Later package. Years pass, and Wallace returns to his village as a grown man. Calm eyes, long hair, and that I'm trying to mind my business aura. He's not trying to be a revolutionary. He's trying to be left alone. He's trying to farm, breathe fresh air, and maybe fall in love like a normal human. And then the movie introduces Murren, his childhood friend, and Wallace immediately folds. Like, instantly. This man sees her and his entire plan becomes, quiet life, wife, no wars, thank you. But unfortunately, Longshanks is running England like a villainous HOA. The English roll out this nasty policy, prima nocta, where an English lord can claim a new bride on her wedding night. Yeah, that's not rule of law, that's medieval harassment with paperwork. Wallace and Murren get married in secret to avoid it, and for a brief moment, the movie lets you think Wallace might actually get peace. And if you believe that, I have a bridge in sterling to sell you. Because this is Braveheart. Happiness is a short-term rental. One day, English soldiers try to take Murren. Wallace locks in, throws hands, and saves her in the moment, but the English come back later and capture her anyway, because cruelty loves a rematch. And then, they execute her. No trial, no mercy. They tie her up in the village square and slit her throat like she's an inconvenience. And this is the spark. This is the moment Wallace stops trying to live quietly and starts trying to end people. He snaps, goes full beast mode, rides into town with a small crew, and slaughters every English soldier he can find. It's not a political statement yet. It's grief with a sword. It's personal. And here's the thing, when people are oppressed long enough, they don't need a perfect plan. They need a symbol. They need someone reckless enough to say, enough. Word spreads that some madman just ran the fade on an entire English garrison, and suddenly Scottish men start showing up like, so, we doing this or what? Wallace isn't a politician. He's not even a trained general in the way the nobles are, but he's got rage, courage, and an absurdly large sword. And that's enough to make people believe again. So now we're in the rebellion arc. Wallace and his scrappy squad start hitting English outposts, ambushing patrols, humiliating soldiers, and turning freedom into a contagious disease. The English have armor, cavalry, money, and structure. The Scots have mud, rage, and a willingness to die if it means the other guy dies first. And the more Wallace wins, the more Scotland wakes up. Then we get to the big moment, the Battle of Stirling Bridge. Except the movie looks at the word bridge and says, nah, we're good. Historical purists cry about this scene like it stole their lunch money. But I'm going to be honest, nobody cares, because the scene still slaps. The English show up with heavy cavalry and the arrogance of people who've never been told no. The Scots are lined up with spears, face paint, and that we're absolutely not surviving this energy. And Wallace delivers the speech. The speech. The one that's basically a gym motivation poster for your soul. They may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom. Goosebumps. That line is doing cardio in your bloodstream. The battle kicks off and it's chaos. arrows, screaming, mud, horses going down, men getting turned into physics experiments. It's brutal, messy, and somehow exhilarating. And against all odds, the Scots win. The Empire bleeds, the underdogs get their moment. Wallace becomes a legend overnight. And now England can't just treat Scotland like a background DLC. They have a problem. But here's the reset hook. While Wallace is out here building hope, Scotland's nobles are playing Monopoly. The Scottish lords are bickering over titles, lands, and survival, which is the fancy way of saying they're scared. They want safety. They want comfort. They want freedom, as long as it doesn't cost them anything. And right in the middle of this mess is Robert the Bruce, stuck between being a leader and being a pawn. He's got the bloodline and the name, but not the spine yet. Not fully. Meanwhile, back in England, Longshanks sees Wallace rising and decides to handle it personally. And Longshanks is not the fight fair type. This man is cold, calculating, and ruthless in the way only someone wearing royal robes can be. He starts moving armies like chess pieces and treating human lives like spare coins. He also marries off his son to a French princess, Isabel, because in medieval politics, marriage is basically a corporate merger. Isabel, by the way, is nothing like Longshanks. She's smart, kind, and immediately realizes Wallace isn't some savage barbarian. He's a man fighting because he's been forced to, and that's why she becomes emotionally invested, because she has eyes. Wallace doesn't stop. He takes the fight to England, burns towns, hits targets, and becomes this myth the English whisper about like he's a bedtime horror story. But the more he wins, the more enemies he makes. Not just in England, but in Scotland too. Because Wallace represents something the nobles fear. Change. And change doesn't ask permission. Now, here's where it gets ugly. The Battle of Falkirk. Wallace shows up ready to fight, but the Scottish nobles pull their men out mid-battle. Why? Because Longshanks paid them off. And when your own country sells you out for coins, that's not strategy. That's rot. The Scots lose, the battlefield turns into a massacre, and Wallace gets hit with the worst kind of pain. Betrayal. Not by an enemy, by his people. And then it gets worse, because Wallace almost gets killed by a knight, who turns out to be Robert the Bruce in disguise. That reveals a gut punch. Wallace doesn't look angry in that moment. He looks heartbroken. Like, even you? And Robert is standing there realizing he just became the thing Wallace hates most. That betrayal changes everything. Wallace isn't playing the win hearts and minds game anymore. He goes rogue. No more noble negotiations. No more trusting anyone in a fancy cloak. It's assassination season now. Wallace starts targeting traitors, striking fear into collaborators, and turning rebellion into revenge. And while he's doing that, Robert the Bruce is spiraling. He's furious at himself, ashamed and trapped under the influence of his dying father, a man who cares more about power than Scotland. His father admits he made the call. He pushed Robert into betrayal. And you can see Robert's soul cracking in real time, because deep down, Robert wants to be good. He just hasn't been brave enough to pay the price yet. Now, reset hook. You already know this can't end clean. Legends don't get to retire, and sure enough, Wallace gets captured. Not by the English outplaying him in glorious battle, but through betrayal again by one of the Scottish lords. Because nothing says patriot like selling your hero to the enemy. Wallace is dragged to London, put on trial for treason. Treason, by the way, for fighting the people occupying his own country, and sentenced to die. And this ending hits like a warhammer. They torture Wallace in public. They want him to beg. They want him to submit. They want him to validate the Empire's power by asking for mercy. And he refuses. He stays silent through the pain, like his body's breaking, but his spirit refuses to kneel. The crowd watches, horrified, and you can feel the moment shift from spectacle to martyrdom. And then, in his final moment, right before the end, Wallace screams one word. Freedom. Not help. Not mercy. Freedom. And it echoes. It's raw, heartbreaking, and it's the entire movie's thesis in one howl. But the story doesn't end there, because this isn't just Wallace's story. It's Scotland's. The movie closes with Robert the Bruce finally choosing a side. A year after Wallace's death, Robert leads the Scottish army at the Battle of Bannockburn. He invokes Wallace's name, not as a tragic memory, but as fuel. He finally stops compromising. He finally becomes the leader Scotland needed. The Scots charge. The battle begins, and Wallace's fight transforms from one man's vengeance into a nation's mission. Let's talk about why this movie still hits, because it's not just the gore and the speeches. It's the emotional engineering. Mel Gibson, whatever you think about him off screen, is electric here. His Wallace is funny, fierce, vulnerable, and totally believable as the kind of guy people would follow into hell. Not because he wants a crown, but because he wants dignity. Patrick McGowan's Longshanks is terrifying in the quietest way possible. No cartoon villain energy, just a man who treats cruelty like policy. And Angus MacFadyen, as Robert the Bruce, is the secret weapon. That arc matters because he starts as a torn pawn and ends as the person carrying Wallace's spirit forward. Without that payoff, the tragedy's almost too heavy. Visually, it's gorgeous and brutal. Sweeping green hills and misty battlefields. Then the camera drops you into chaos, so you feel every impact. James Horner's score isn't background music. It grabs you by the throat. Braveheart won 5 Oscars, including Best Picture, Best Director, and Best Cinematography. Made over $200 million worldwide, and basically stapled itself into pop culture forever. That blue-painted freedom image is iconic for a reason. Is it accurate? Not even close. But the emotional truth lands. Tyranny, betrayal, sacrifice, and a courage that doesn't survive, but inspires. It's not about winning the war. It's about starting it. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to like and subscribe for more.